My guest on the show today, someone that I've gotten to know over the last couple of months, amazing individual, Mervin Budram, motivational speaker, brand strategist, multimedia host. I'm going to actually give him more to his intro than he gave me. He's the host of the Creative Monday discussion show. He is an acclaimed gospel musician. We're going to talk about this. He's a humble man, and he's a dad. He's a business owner. He's an entrepreneur. Mervin, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure being with you. And you did great with my name. A lot of people butcher it. Some people say Budram,
Budram.
You did awesome.
Budram.
Yes. Yeah, you did great.
I tried. Thank you so much, Mervin. So glad you're here. We made this happen. You are coming to us from Belize.
From Belize, yes.
From Belize. Yeah. Are you originally from Belize?
Yes, I was born here. Grew up here. I've lived here all my life. Traveled a lot outside, but Belize has been home. It's been where I've gotten groomed and trained in everything that I do.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for being here. Let's get right into it. We have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
First question for you, Mervin. What's something that you nerd out about?
I was talking to my wife about this, right? I get very organizing. Like if I walk into a space and it's kind of really like disorganized, like I can't even start to work if my space is out of order. So I start to like set everything in place. I start to kind of just really structure things. I would go, if I walk in the house, before I even wash the dishes, for instance, I have to make sure all the plates are from small to big, all the cups are together. So it's just something that I carry in every era. And even with my file saving on my computer, if you ask me, for instance, hey, I want a picture for this instance or whatever, and you ask me, do you have that? I will just tell me the year and tell me the month it happened, and I can find it because all my folders are saved by names, by dates, by months, and so that I can easily find them. So it's just one of those things I take, I guess, very seriously.
Yeah. I have a request of you, Mervin.
Yeah.
Would you like me to send you my computer? You can do that for me.
I would love it. I would love to do it. I enjoy it's therapy for me. Actually, it's weird because when I need to relax, I would start organize my emails. I would just go and I have folders. I would spend a good hour just organizing my emails and making sure everything is in the right folder, and this client and this response and these are leads, and it's my relaxed therapy.
Yeah, I can tell you, I think we do have quite a bit in common. This is one thing we do not have in common. That does not sound relaxing. I like to, good on you. Your business partners and employees and your wife is very fortunate to have that, because that is not, I can do it. I do not enjoy it at all. I avoid it. I'm like, yeah, it's organized enough.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So we're going to talk about comfort zones, and you're an entrepreneur, musician, speaker. So you do a lot of things that probably at some point were pretty outside of your comfort zone as a performer. Yeah. I know you get on big stages and such. What is something that is inside of your comfort zone that you know is outside of other people? And for you, I'm going to take a couple things off the table to make it a little bit more challenging. We're going to take speaking off the table. No talking about speaking, and no talking about performing music or singing in front of people. So in other words, we're taking off in front of people stuff, because we know you do that you do it for a living. And maybe you're still uncomfortable, but I'm not going to make this too easy for you. So what's something else that's inside your comfort zone that you know is outside of somebody else's?
Wow, that's a good question. You did take off all the easy ones that my go-to. You took off my go-to. Let me give that some thought. I think for me, something that comes really easy is to be able to see the big picture and really really go after it. My wife mentioned this. She says, like, whenever I get involved with something, like, there's a sense of peace that comes in there. Yeah. And I find that, like, I hear a vision and I see it, and I don't get stressed by it. I'm like, oh wow, okay, let's get it done. And I start automatically in my mind, I start break it down into steps to get there. And I was thinking about this even driving today. Like, my parents, they had a business. I grew up in a business with my parents, and in my mind, it was easy for me to see that business scale. It was easy for me to see the future of that business and where we can go to, right? And I think that's something that comes really natural for me. seeing the bigger picture and believing in it.
Yeah, I would agree. That is something that is outside of a lot of people's comfort zones.
Yeah.
There's been studies on this that, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it's something like only 15% of all people are really true visionaries.
Yeah.
And the rest of the people are more the doers. And there's no right or wrong to being either of those.
Yeah.
I always identified, for me personally, I always identified much more as a doer. And I think I'm moving more into visionary based on the kind of work I do now. But I always identified in my career as I was the guy you could give me some stuff and I would get it done. But I never really had a big vision. Like looking at my corporate career, I didn't have a lot of the vision, which at least, so when I hear somebody like you say that, and that's my experience of you, I'm always really impressed with that skill, because that's such a superpower to be able to look at something and go, hey, this is good. What would make it great? Or what are the possibilities here, especially outside of the circumstances of the moment? Because it can be easy to say, hey, well, the business isn't doing well. We're not making enough money. Therefore, it's not going to go anywhere. But like, what could it be outside of like the reality in the moment? That's such a superpower.
Yeah. It's interesting because I never thought I had that. I never, because it's so common, and it's something I do all the time. I didn't see it, and it's when I started my journey of self-discovery, trying to figure out what's my personal brand, my brand DNA. I started to see those things about myself. And one memory that comes up for me instant, like I was on a band when I was 12 years old, and we had this huge concert to do in the city. We did a countrywide tour, and everything came to this one location. And so we walked in, and the leader had all these elements on the stage, but he didn't know how to bring it together. And he was like, and then he was busy trying to make everything happen. And they just like I was like 12 or 13, and they're like, okay, work on the stage. And I took all the elements, and I was able to deck out and like just lay out a decor using like our cultural drums and a boat. I got a boat on the stage, and
wow,
and and I never even saw that. Like, as I was 12 years old doing that, and I never even realized that I was creating the set for the stage. And even when we do events, that's a big part of the role I play to pull the entire experience together, right? And but it was when I started to really dive into my personal brand and my uniqueness that I started to realize, hey, that's not so easy for everyone. And I would say I have a unique gift in that I do have that visionary aspect, but I'm also strong on the doing. I'm very much a doer as well. Mm-hmm. And so I get the vision, and then I also know how to kind of start getting there and do the work, which sometimes can be a problem because you let go. It's hard to let go because you know how to, you see it, and you also know how to make it come together.
Yeah, that's cool, Mervin. What about the other side of that question? So reverse that question. What's something that you were uncomfortable doing, something that's outside your comfort zone, and you know that there's other people, this is their sweet spot?
It's interesting because I have a hard time meeting new people and connecting with new people, which is strange as an entrepreneur, as someone who network. But I find that if you get me in the door and get me in front of the right person, I can deliver. But to open the door and to kind of know exactly how to kind of, connect with that person or get that key to open, I tend to struggle a lot with that. So I think that's one of the uncomfortable areas for me, to be able to kind of just really, so pitching, for instance, pitching the idea, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
So if someone pitched that idea and we get in, I can definitely, I can really go from there.
All right. We need to trade. You organize my stuff. I'll be your pitch man. Like, what you described there is totally inside my comfort zone. Walking into a room of 100 people and not knowing any of them, I have zero fear.
Yeah.
So walk up, start saying hi, and knowing it's not always going to go exactly well, but yeah, it sounds like we can do some trading.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great, Mervin. All right. So let's talk about speaking. So you are a motivational speaker. You've been on big stages before.
Yeah.
If I had the power to give you 5 minutes and you got to speak to the entire world, what is it that you would want to talk to us about? And at the end of that speech, what would be your call to action? What would you want us to do? 5 minutes max.
That's a good question. I would say it goes right back to vision, getting clear on your vision, because by getting clear on your vision, it gives you that discipline that you need to really shift what you need to shift in your life, and then also help you get the results that you need. I find that a lot of people are stuck. They're either stuck in their minds, they're either stuck in their limitations, they're just really feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling kind of like uncertain of how to move. And a lot of that is because there's not a sense of clarity on where to go. So I'm a person that obviously I wear a lot of caps. I have a lot of roles that I play, and for years I felt stuck. For years I felt like I was on a treadmill and just running like a hamster on a wheel, and you were spinning but you're not getting anywhere. And when I took the time to really get clarity on that vision, I realized that I was able to focus. I was able to kind of break free from some of my limiting beliefs, and I was able to start journey forward and start actually see results in my own journey.
Yeah. What kind of support did you have to do that? And I identify a lot with your story. For years, I felt I was satisfied yet stuck at the same time, which is a really strange place to be. It's like you intellectually know that there should be nothing like wrong, or that you should be happy, but then you're just not really. What kind of support? From my experiences, that was not something I was able to take care of all by myself. I needed multiple ways of support. What about you? Did you obviously you're married, so you have a great spouse, as you mentioned, but any other support structures that you'd recommend to other people who identify with that?
Definitely. I would, like, for me, what happened, and you brought an interesting point, because I had success, I'm performing on big stage. I'm traveling. I'm doing all these great stuff, but internally I felt like I wasn't living up to my full potential. I felt like there was a lot more. And so that's when I saw this advertisement, on Facebook. A friend of mine, put out that she's starting to do coaching. Like, she's offering coaching. And I knew her from years ago, because in one of my earlier business ventures, we managed an apartment complex here in Belize for a few years. So one of my earlier business ventures, she was one of those mentors that we went to, and I said, hey, here's what we're doing. Give us some advice. And, my business partner at the time and I were very young. We were like 20, 21 as we were doing this. And her name is Melanie Escalante. And so I reached out to her, and I knew her. I reached out to her and I said, hey, I see you're doing personal coaching, and also visioneering, vision coaching, vision strategy coaching. And I told her, this is where I'm at, and I feel stuck. I feel like we were my wife and I were the director of a youth organization. We were having thousands of youths conferences. We're doing outreaches all over Belize. I'm running businesses. I'm doing concerts. I'm doing business summits. And yet inside I felt I'm not living up to my full potential. And I felt I was just spinning wheels and not getting anywhere. And so when I sat down with her, that was crucial, because that was the first time I heard myself processing, because I'm a vocal processor.
Yeah,
and she just started to ask me questions and really dig deep within. And I thought the session would be me listening. And I realized, up to that point, I had a lot of counseling sessions, like with my pastor and different leaders, but I didn't have coaching sessions. And I realized that at that point that I did well with coaching. I needed someone who was not on the field with me, who was looking from the outside and just asking questions and caused me to really process and think and really okay, where are we going? Where do we want to get the ball? How do we want to get across the field? What's the most efficient way to get there? Who do we know in our network that can help us get there faster? And to have someone just kind of being like a sounding board that I can speak and hear myself back. Many times it was crazy. I set goals in those sessions and I was like, in 2 years, we're going to do this. And boom, in a month, everything just came in alignment. It just naturally, divinely came in alignment. And I think part of that was just really, digging deep and mining that treasure that was within me and bringing it out, and for me to hear it and then sitting down, write it and kind of release it. Right. So I believe in coaching. I'm saying all of that. I think having a coach, having someone, And I do also build, there is seasons for counseling.
Of course, yeah,
and that's definitely needed. That was in my earlier stage of my life where there was just some past hurts and wounds I needed to deal with. So the counseling is needed, but I think there comes a space where to go to the next level, you need that coaching person to really get in there and help you navigate the space.
Yeah, I love that, Mervin. Before we go to the commercial break, I just want to say, you speak in my language here. I do, I'm one of the things I do is a professional coach, and there's room for all of the different methodologies, for counseling, for therapy, for consulting, for coaching, for mentorship. These things are all valuable. And any of those things, when you're going to work with somebody, you should work with somebody who knows the difference, because they can become very blurred. Yeah. And it's not generally a good thing. Not very good, but it sounds like, well, and I was thinking about this because one of the things in coaching is, at least in the coach training program I went through, you relate to your clients as whole and complete, and that they already have the answers inside of themselves, which is not how you would relate to somebody as a consultant. You'd say, oh, they're missing data, they're missing expertise. I love consulting. I do consulting work as well, but it's a good methodology. So I'm glad you got that support and you're here with us now and able to do that and all the things you're up to. And this is the perfect time to take a quick commercial break, because when we come back, we're going to get to know a lot more about all the things you've been up to and you're up to now. So Mervin, we'll come back right after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
Perfect.
Hey, Mervin, we're back. What do you want us to know about you? Yeah. What do you want all of us to know about you?
I think when it comes down to it, I am someone who wants to inspire, motivate, and transform lives. I'm very passionate about that, and I do that. I try to do that through all my giftings, all my resources. I definitely do that through entrepreneurship. I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship and really helping the entrepreneur. I remember, like I said, I started out in business from a young age. Actually, I grew up in a family-run business. And I remember it was like when I was 20, 21, 22, I got involved with some entrepreneurship programs here in Belize. And I'm like, why didn't we find this a long time ago, right? So because of that, I find that there's a passion in me to really help entrepreneurs kind of get clear on their journey and help grow their business and help reach where they need to get. I also help with their brand, because I feel like there's a lot of people that have great talent, they have great skill, they got great offering, but when they put it out there, it's not palatable. It's not presented in a way where you want to eat this, you want to take it in, right? And so that's also one of the things that I care much about, making sure that our brand and our presentation matches up to the value that you carry within you. Right. Yeah. And so it's important. I think that's important to know about me. And then also I love working with young people as well. And so through my music, I've created music that really inspire, music that really motivates and challenges young people. And I also do that as well with my talk show. I have a podcast, Creative Mother Discussion Show. And that podcast really is focused on people who are inspirational, people who are doing transformative work through their business ventures, and they're sharing that, and they're just giving tips and advice to help people learn how to improve themselves, learn how to grow their business, and then learn how to impact their community in a great way. So it's all of it kind of comes under this whole aspect of really inspiring people, motivating, and transforming lives.
Yeah. I'm gonna steer the ship a little bit here, because I know more about you than the other people listening. You're a very accomplished musician.
Yes.
Very accomplished. Yes. And Mervin's smiling now. I think I could see you blushing. So you are a singer?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
What other instruments do you play?
I play the drums. That was the first instrument I learned when I was 9.
Every parent's favorite instrument, the drums.
Very loud. Yes, very loud. Bang. Whenever I got stressed, I remember whenever I felt stressed when I was young, I would go to the church building and I would get on the drums and I'll beat the crap out of that drums, man. Like, that was how I released.
Great.
That was my stress reliever at the time.
Yeah.
I also play the guitar. I'm a guitarist. I play the piano, the keyboard. And I do a little bit of the recorder. I play that when I was in school, and then I'm also a singer, songwriter as well.
Yeah. So just guitar, drums, singing. Do you play any bass?
Yes, I play the bass as well.
Yeah, I've had a feeling. The bass as well. Yeah, most guitar players could play a little bit of bass.
Yes,
same thing. And then you write songs.
Yes.
And then you compose music as well?
I compose music. I produce. Actually, I had a record label. I had the first Christian record label in Belize.
Amazing.
And I had like 5 artists signed to my label. So I produce all their music, different genres. So I love creating. I love producing, and music is definitely one of those outlets. A memory is coming up. I mean, for me right now, I was tasked by a couple that was getting married. They asked me to produce their wedding song. So we wrote a wedding song, and they flew me to Taiwan to deliver that song. So that was super cool. I really enjoyed that experience. That is super cool. Yeah.
That is super cool. Thank you for sharing, Mervin.
Yeah.
We got to know a little bit more about you, to everybody listening. So now it is your chance as a fellow podcast host to ask me a question or two that I can answer for you that you're wondering about. Answer it for you and for everybody listening. What would you like to ask me?
I think what's coming up for me is the show, the Talking to Cool People podcast. Like, how did that come about? Like, how did you
Great question.
Get into that space?
Yes. I'll tell you how I started the podcast, and I'll tell you how I came up. Sorry. I'll tell you how the podcast title came about, because it was not from me. I've shared this a few times. I love this question. I was just starting out in my entrepreneurial journey in October of 2019, and I got to go on my first podcast as a guest, and I had a great time. And then I remember saying to my coach and to my wife, "Hey, I'm going to start a podcast." So I did, and I came up with the questions that my audience knows I ask every single guest, every single show. I might change them up at some point, but they seem to work pretty well, so we keep them going. And I don't really remember coming up with them. In a way, there was kind of like a creative ease thing for me. I'm like, hey, this feels interesting.
Yeah,
I think this really allows my guests to be themselves and answer it really in almost any way they want to, while still giving some sort of guidance, which, as you know, as a podcast host, can sometimes be a bit of a challenge, where like people will pitch to you to come on. You say, great, what do you want to talk about? They're like, I don't know. Like, well, so now here's the questions I'm going to ask you. You do your thing inside of this structure. I had recorded about 10 episodes and hadn't released it. So my target was to release on January 6th, 2020. And I had recorded 8 or 9 episodes. Maybe it was even 10. And I think it was my 5th or 6th recording was Krista Rizzo, this firecracker. Mm-hmm. She's a coach. She's amazing. Great speaker, just a really wonderful human. Somebody that I'd gotten to know, and I invited her on, and we were done, and we were catching up after we got done recording. I said, Krista, I don't know what to call this thing, because somebody else had told me, and it felt a little too businessy to me. It was kind of like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't thing. And she's like, I don't know. I just feel like you should call, like, I don't know, like talking to cool people. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. So Krista Rizzo, nice. I give Krista Rizzo full credit for this title. And it's such a good title because it is actually what I do. It's directly what I do. And I have a lot of people that reach out to want to be on, because like, it just makes sense. This is what I do. I talk to cool people. I literally talk to cool people, and it fits into my mantra that everybody that I have on, and really, I think almost everybody in this world has something really cool about them. And it's not usually just the thing they do for a living.
Yeah.
It's usually like for many people, I would say it's arguably the least interesting thing to me is what they do for a living. Not everybody. I think I've had some fascinating guests who do some pretty crazy stuff. I've had other guests, like, our conversation doesn't barely even go into what they do, because they do something that's, fairly common, but they have this fascinating backstory or amazing hobbies or things they do. So that is where the title of the show came from. And I changed the branding of it about a year and a half ago, just because I wanted to rebrand like the logo and such, but that's been the title the whole time. And I don't see it changing at this point. Yeah. And, you know, Mervin, I think this will be, by the time we release this, will be somewhere on episode 130, 135, somewhere around there. So it's, thank you very much. Consistency. So thank you for the question. We actually have time for another one. Do you have something else you want to ask me?
Yes, actually thinking about, you know, you're talking about kind of getting in this space. Like, did you, as a kid, when you looked into your future, what did you envision yourself? What did you see? And are you on that path, or have you divert from that path?
Mervin, I feel like you're a bit of a, I don't know if you heard me on another podcast or saw me speak on this. Not. Wow, you're this is a little bit creepy, but for everybody listening, this is not prepared. I want to be very clear.
Yeah.
I had no idea you're going to ask that. I wrote a speech about why I became a podcaster.
Oh, wow.
And I delivered it at Toastmasters last week. So this is a little, this is very, doesn't feel like a coincidence. So I'll share the quick story. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Johnny Carson and then Jay Leno. And then in my speech, I say something like, you know, who doesn't want to sit down and talk to interesting people, ask them fun questions, entertain, you know, as an extrovert, I like being in front of people and talking. And then I said, but then you see Jimmy Fallon, who leaves Saturday Night Live and realizes he gets that chair. And I'm over here working in a corporate sales job. And I realized that like maybe I missed my window to be the next host of the Tonight Show, which is why I do podcasting, because really anybody can podcast. You need very little. You need an internet connection. You don't even need an internet connection technically, because you could record locally, but you need some sort of microphone, which Apple makes great microphones. It's not what we're recording on today. We both have real microphones, but use that. You need some sort of thing to publish it to the networks and all that. So now this is my Jason tiny little version. No, I do not get paid what Jimmy Fallon gets paid to do this show. I get to have a talk show and bring on people that I want to talk to and get to do it. So that is my path. So if you asked me this as a kid, I would have had no idea. When I was a kid, there's no such thing as podcasts. So that's the first thing. But I think, I saw a world where I would end up talking to people and interviewing them. I like this better actually, because, you know, the secret in late night television, those questions are all pre-prepped, because if it's Tom Cruise, he's talking about Top Gun Maverick, if they're going on to promote their stuff. That's why they're out there doing this. So a lot of those questions are prompted. You all as guests have my questions, but I don't ever say, I want you to talk about this. It's really for you to run with, which is for me is more fun. It's more curious based versus, and you know, like, and all those things. And if you're listening and you want to come on this podcast and talk about Top Gun Maverick, which opens tomorrow in theaters nationwide, I'd love to have you on, Tom. So if anybody knows Tom or Tom, you happen to be listening to my podcast, which I'm sure that's top priority for you, I'd love to have you on sometime. Well, Mervin, thank you for both of those questions. It's fun.
Definitely.
You can tell, and my listeners know, I'm a passionate podcaster. I love it. People are like 130, that's a lot. I'm like, it doesn't feel like it's just so much darn fun.
Yeah.
So much darn fun.
It's the same with my show, the Creative Bonus Show. We started that in 2020, and we started as a live streaming.
That's hard work.
It is hard work. And cranking out an episode every week. Oof. And we just switched over. We're in our 5th season now, and we just switched over to pre-recording. But you know, we're at our 61 episode right now, and it's been great. I love it. I see myself, actually, if it was up to me, I would be doing this every day. But my wife is like, no, we're just going to take it one step at a time. We're going to do one for a week, and then over time, we're going to increase the episodes that we release out.
Yeah. It's also, anybody who's in this space, it's not a moneymaker.
It's not.
Media is not. I mean, you gotta have some real numbers in order to make any money in podcasting or live streaming. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a crowded space, and it's just not something that's easy to monetize. So you have to have a passion for it. That's one of the other things I say in my speech is, don't get into any of this stuff because you think you're going to become the next Dax Shepard or, God forbid, Joe Rogan. Like, those are unicorns in a space that has 800,000 podcasters, just like live streaming, because the barrier to entry is very low. Internet connection, a computer. To live stream, you need an internet connection, a computer, and a camera on your computer, and that's really, and a microphone. That's really all you need. and some sort of software.
And it's quite interesting though. Like for me, I've had because going back to that, getting clear on the vision, because I got clear on that vision of what I want to accomplish and what I want to do with my life. The podcast, and for us, we actually didn't start as a podcast. We started as a talk show. And we're on television in Belize, and it was quite interesting. I believe in ownership, right? And what I mean by that, like I see myself owning my own media network and my own television network and all of that in the future. And so when we started the Creative Monday discussion show, we started that on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and then a television network approached us and said, "Hey, this is quite unique. We like the way you're doing this show. Can we carry this?" And so a local television network here in Belize, a channel, TNC, the national channels, "Hey, we want to carry the show." And then another one in Europe reached out and said, "Hey, we like what we're seeing." And so our show is being carried on television in Belize, in Europe, in Antigua. And then we also live stream. And then we decided this year to switch it, to add that podcast element to it. So we just started the podcast element, but because of that as well, we've been able to monetize it and been able to kind of, I'm not making any money from it yet, but at least I've been able to hire staff that works in the background to run the show element of it, right? So it's quite interesting when you get clear on that vision. Things start to fall into place.
That's I'll have to get some coaching from you on what's next for my mini media empire of 2 podcasts. All right, Mervin.
Anytime.
Yeah. Mervin, back to you. What is it that you're passionate about?
Yeah. I'm very passionate about helping people come into freedom and wholeness. I think that's and freedom is because of my journey, and that goes all the way back to whether it's financial freedom, whether there's, you might be unhappy with your life, you might be unhappy with the state that you're in, and you're struggling in kind of moving forward and kind of start to head in that purpose that you have for your life. So I'm very passionate about helping people break free, come into freedom, as well as come into wholeness, like really discovering the fullness of who you are and bringing all of who you are to the table. Because many times we show up and we only show up with 10% of who we are. We show up with 5% of who we are. And some of us, we don't even know how to use the fullness of who we are in the space that we want to be in, right? So I'm very passionate about giving people tools, giving them handles in how to come into greater levels of freedom, and then how to come into greater levels of wholeness in their lives.
I love that. I'll give you something that I use, that from one of the things I do is I do communications coaching and training with a company called Life Hikes. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of work with like large enterprises. We train on executive presence and speaking and how to own a room. Like it used to be called Own the Room. And we have a thing, and feel free to use this, Mervin, if you like it. I thought this was really impactful. In one of our modules, we talk about how humans were like diamonds, and most like a normal diamond, I think, has 58 facets. And then we ask the audience, how many facets are you bringing to your workplace? And the answer is usually like 2, maybe 3. Or like, what would it be like if you just brought 4 or 5 facets to workplace? It would be so much more fun. So the whole idea that like I think one of the things, the pandemic and just being in 2022 in a lot of industries, it's really much more encouraged than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I love that. I think it's a such needed thing, is how do you like bring who you were created to be here in this world into your work, which is actually most anybody, which is so interesting because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs. When you talk to any entrepreneur, I've never talked to an entrepreneur and asked them, hey, when do you do your best work? It's always when they're being themselves every single time. Yeah. Which is so interesting because when you work in a corporation, like I did for almost 20 years, it never got talked about. And it's not that I tried to bring myself, but you're always holding back. You don't want to know too much. It's gonna be used against you, and like all those kind of toxic workplace stuff. And I was fortunate. I never really had like anything bad happen in my corporate career. I was like the companies, like my managers and teams and such. But man, it's like the lesson I would just give to everybody, and it sounds like work you do too, is just bring a little bit more of yourself, is actually one of the ways you can increase your performance.
I love that. I really love that because it really, And I am going to use it, by the way.
Good.
It gives language to some of what I'm feeling and what I'm passionate about, right? And so, but I always tell people this: working on yourself is working on your business. Working on your business is working on yourself. And a lot of people try to separate the two.
Yeah.
But I find that if I am doing well personally, if I'm doing well, right now I'm working on my health, for instance. Right now, that's been the track I've been on. I'm back in the gym. I've been in the gym for 3 months. But I find that my level of productivity, I find that my clarity of thinking in the office is much better because I'm in a healthier state personally, right? So working on yourself is working on your business. Working on your business is working on yourself. You can't separate the two. You could try to separate the two, and it's not sustainable because after a while it becomes tiring because you're not being your full authentic self.
Yeah, I love that. One of the coaching questions that'll come up sometimes that I'll ask when people are talking about something that's not going well in their business, especially like entrepreneurs, and I'll just say like, well, where else is that showing up in your life? And every single time they'll go,
yeah.
They'll be like, exactly. My marriage, my parenting, my friendships, my finances. One of my good friends, she's like, where it shows up in one place is where it shows up everywhere. Like, and I can look at in my business, in my podcasting, and I can tell you the things that I'm not super happy about in my business. And I can be like, well, you can make a parallel, you can make a one-to-one connection to some of the other areas of my life too. So I love that. So keep doing what you're doing. That's a really much needed
thank you.
message. So Mervin, what's the thing in your life that you're most proud of?
I would say my kids, my family. And that people might like, oh yeah, that's common. But for me, that's huge. Like I never thought I would have a family. I never wanted a family, I'll be honest. I was planning on becoming this corporate tycoon and just conquer the world and go to
because you can't possibly do both.
Yeah, right. No, but it was just because there was a lot of challenges in my upbringing in the background. We had some dysfunctionality in our homes, and I just didn't want that. And I saw a lot of people, and this is kind of going back to eras of overcoming things I've overcome and coming into freedom, right? I saw a lot of broken homes, a lot of broken relationships, and I didn't want that. But when I was 19, this is quite interesting. I broke my foot. I was playing volleyball and I ran to save the ball, and I didn't know this was at a golf course, by the way. I didn't know there was a cliff at the end. And so I ran to save this ball, looking up. I saved the ball. The game continued, and I went down and I fell about 15 to 20 feet. And I landed on hard clay. I shattered my instep, shattered my ankle, shattered my foot. The game continued, by the way, because the ball went back. And it was about 5 minutes later, there was like, where's Mervin? And then a girl looked over, screamed, saw me down there. Anyways, long story short, I had to be in a cast for 9 months.
Oh my God.
They had to put all my bones on the steel that was in my foot.
Yeah.
Well, that 9 months, my pastor said, hey, it doesn't make sense for you to keep living in the house I was at because I was in a wheelchair. So they offered for me to live with them for that period. And that was the first time I got to see real family, like real family. I'm not talking about perfection. They had their issues. Every family has their issues.
Sure.
But they were loving. There was love. There was discipline. There was a lot of structure. And something in me said, okay, I want that. So at 19, I made that decision to say, hey, this was 1920. I wanted that. That's where the discipline started in my life. I saw a vision of what I wanted for family. And I said, okay, if I'm going to have a family, I don't want to be struggling. And so I started to save $2 every day. And nice. I opened a bank account and $2 every day. And I used to drink a soda and Cheetos every day. And I said, I'm going to stop doing that. And I took that money and I started putting it in the bank. And over time, that money built up. And so that's one of the things I always tell people, like, you don't have to start with a lot. A little bit adds up over time. Just small deposits. I was able to buy a land from that money that I saved. When I got married, there was money in an account that I didn't have to go into marriage stressed, right? So thinking about my family, my kids, that's where the discipline came in to build. I built the type of company I got into, the business I built was because I wanted to be flexible for my kids and my family. I didn't want to be out there working and my kids need me. And so anyways, everything I did was built around the fact that I really wanted to have a good family, have loving kids, be there, be available for my kids, right? So that's really is one of my greatest accomplishments. And it's still one of my greatest challenge because having 3 girls, I have 3 girls and no boys, and I'm a guy, I'm a real guy.
Yeah.
And having 3 girls and having to learn how to be loving and learn how to be caring in my words and learning how to be tender. And it's my greatest accomplishment, but it also humbles me the most because, I go home and I have to relate with my kids and make sure that, they love me and I love them still and I like them still. Right. So it's been a journey, but it's helped me even in business because I found that working with my staff, my team, I've learned to be a lot more compassionate, to be a lot more understanding, to be a lot more aware of what they're going through in their personal life and how that impacts what happens in the business and with their work. And I'm able to get in there from a position of compassion, but yet still say, hey, I know you're going through this. We still have these things we need to get done. How can we marry the two and serve both and that nothing falls to the ground, right? And so it's been a learning journey for me from that.
Yeah. Nice. All right. I call this my therapy question. You ready to get vulnerable with us? Maybe
let's get vulnerable.
Yeah, you're like, let's shed some tears. Let's go there. Mervin, what's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
I think you're top vulnerable and I actually want to tear up as I think about this, but just the whole, like, am I lovable and am I likable? I find that, am I worthy of love and am I worthy of being liked and accepted, right? And I think that's, I find that I do a lot. I find that I serve a lot. And then sometimes in the back of my mind, that question comes up, I'm doing all of these things. Am I doing this just for people to accept me? Am I doing this just, because maybe deep down inside, I don't feel loved. Although I'm not saying my wife doesn't love me. I'm not saying people aren't giving me love, but I'm not feeling it, or I'm not, sometimes I feel, am I worthy of it? Right. And so I think that's been one of my greatest struggle and one of the things I've been really working on. And it really goes as well back to my health. Actually, that's part of what's been coming up as I've been in the gym and dealing with that, like to like myself, to like my body, to like, to just accept me. I told my gym trainer, I walked in there and I told her, I said, I realized this is the most I've looked in a mirror my entire life.
Wow.
Because the gym is full of mirrors all around. Right. And I'm like, this is the most I've looked at myself in the mirror. Right. And so it's been something I've been working on and still working on.
Yeah. Excellent. Mervin, I'm going to start to wrap up here. Love to hear how you see the world. So how do you see the world?
That's a good question. It's a very good question.
Thank you.
Let me give that. let me. But I feel like I see the world several ways. One, I feel like I see the world as a beautiful place, wonderful people, wonderful, just awesome people, and I feel that if everyone discover who they are and they if they find their piece that they contribute, the world will be a beautiful place. And I feel like many times we often hold back. We don't really give what we have. We don't bring our uniqueness to the table. And so then it makes things incomplete, right? So I see the world as a beautiful puzzle that's waiting for the pieces to be set in place so it becomes the fullness of what it can be, right?
Yeah.
And each person carries a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's awesome. We share a similar sentiment about the world. You're much more articulate about it than I am. Somebody asked me this one. So Mervin, let's talk about how the audience how everybody can connect with you. How can people find you, watch your show, listen to your podcast, check out all the cool stuff, listen to your tunes, all of it. And everything you're about to give us is also going to go in the show notes. Okay, Mervin, how can people find you and get connected with you?
Yeah. So I have my website, mervinbudram.com. That's, if you go to that site, that's more my entrepreneurship space. That's more my business space. I'm actually getting ready to update that recently, but you can get all my email there, info@mervinbudram.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for my name, Mervin Budram. And then my show, the Creative Monday Show, if you go to creativemondayshow.com, you can have access to all my past episodes, the archives. You can listen to the podcast. If you're like me, when I'm exercising or working, I like to listen to a podcast. So we have the podcast version for you to listen to. If you want to sit and actually watch the interviews, the video interviews are there. So creativemondayshow.com. And then my music, if you love Caribbean, authentic music, soca fusion with some of the more modern contemporary stuff, you can go to mdfreedommusic.com, right? And so that's mdfreedommusic.com. And then all my music is housed there. And you can also find me on Spotify, Apple Music, on all digital outlets. Look for Mervin Budram -MD, right? And just why the MD? People are always like, why there's an MD? No, I'm
musical
not a doctor. Musical director, but musical doctor. My mom wanted me to be a doctor. So I was majoring in science in school, and I realized in college I did not like oats. I don't like blood. Maybe science isn't for me.
Yeah.
And so, but I love music. And so I went to a performance, and someone just said, "Hey, you're the musical doctor." And I'm like, I like that. So
there you go.
I just started to use that, Mervin Budram MD. And you can find that on all digital outlets and enjoy the music.
Excellent. All right, Mervin, thank you so much for being on today. Last thing. Yes, it was a true pleasure, my friend. Last thing, please leave us with some short and sweet words to wisdom that we all can take and put into practice. What do you got for us?
I think one of the things that's coming up for me, very to the point, take time to clarify your vision. I think that's definitely one of the things you want to spend time in. If you don't do that, you'll be all over the place. You literally will be all over the place. I think taking time to get clear on your vision is very key. Consistency as well. One of the things I've learned this year, 1% better every day has been working for me. Like it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to look at the big picture and say, hey, there's a lot to get done. But if you do 1%, like I did that with the gym, I said, you know what? I can't say I'm going to be at the gym for this entire year. Every day today I'm going to be in. Today I'm going to be in. And so every day making that decision that today I'm going to be 1% better than how I was yesterday, will bring transformation to your life.
Thank you, Mervin. I love that's the concept of Kaizen, right? The Japanese concept of Kaizen is 1% increase over one day. You get a real compounding effect, making that better. Well, thank you so much for being on. Congratulations on all the things you've been up to, all the things you're up to, all the difference you make in all the different types of places in your life that you touch. So you do a lot of work with the youth. You have the music that makes a difference. For music is such a healing thing for people. All the entrepreneurs you work with, all the brand work you do. Just thank you for everything you do, and keep up the good work. And can't wait to have you back again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me. It was definitely a pleasure. Great.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.